After my husband's funeral, I went to my sister's son's first birthday party. There, she announced, "My son is your husband's child, so for inheritance, I'll be taking half of your $800K house." She even pulled out his will. I said, "Oh, I see," trying to hide my laughter, because my husband, it's funny how life can flip on a dime. 3 months ago, I lost my husband Adam at just 36 years old. Our beautiful life together, over in an instant. But what happened days after his funeral, at my nephew's first birthday party, was a betrayal so shocking, so utterly audacious, I actually had to fight back a laugh that would have shattered the room and my sister's face, right there on the spot. Let me tell you about Adam. We met 12 years ago at a charity auction for kids with cancer. I was volunteering, helping with the silent auction items, and I remember staring at this gorgeous watercolor of the Boston skyline at sunset. All these vibrant oranges and purples just bleeding into the harbor. Adam outbid everyone for it. Then, he walked straight over, those kind blue eyes crinkling at the corners, and handed it to me. "I noticed you looking at this all night," he said. "I think it belongs with you." That was Adam, always thoughtful, always observant, generous to a fault. I fell hard. So fast. Our first date felt like we'd known each other forever. He was a brilliant corporate attorney, but so humble. The kind of man who'd remember a waiter's name and ask genuine questions about their life. 8 months later, he proposed right there on the harbor, the real skyline mirroring the painting that brought us together. We bought our beautiful Victorian home in Beacon Hill shortly after our first anniversary. It was a stretch, honestly. An $800,000 house, but Adam had just made partner, and my interior design business was really taking off. The house had amazing bones, high ceilings, and this little garden where I pictured our future kids playing. But those kids never came. We tried everything. For years we charted, planned, hoped. Then came the doctors, the tests, the procedures. 4 rounds of IVF that drained not just our savings, but our very souls. I can still feel that quiet drive home after the last failed attempt. Adam just reached across the console, his hand finding mine. Neither of us said a word. We just knew. It was the end of that road. That night, as we sat on our porch swing, Adam looked at me. "We can still have a beautiful life, Bridget," he said, his voice so gentle. "You and me, that is enough." And he meant it. So we rebuilt our dreams. We traveled the world. We poured ourselves into our careers, renovating that house room by room until it was the absolute showcase home I'd always dreamed of. Adam was my biggest champion when I launched my own design firm. Our life was full. Different, yes, but full. My younger sister Cassandra was always, she was always there. 4 years my junior, she'd been the wild child while I was focused on building a career. Our parents constantly worried about her, which really just meant they constantly enabled her, bailing her out of one financial mess after another. Our relationship was complicated, even as kids. She was undeniably beautiful, with that effortless charm, but there was always this undercurrent of competition from her side. If I achieved something, she had to one-up me. When I started dating Adam, suddenly she was interested in law students. When we bought our dream house, she spent months complaining about her apartment, fishing for our parents to help her upgrade. It was exhausting, honestly, but Adam always encouraged me to keep trying. "She's your only sister," he'd say. "Family is important." 2 years ago, Cassandra started dating Tyler, a bartender with a motorcycle and tattoos, exactly the kind of guy our parents disapproved of. Their relationship was volatile, full of dramatic breakups and passionate makeups. Then came the bombshell. Her pregnancy announcement at Thanksgiving dinner, the year before Adam died. It was unexpected. I mean, here I was, having poured my heart and soul and all our money into IVF, and there she was, announcing her accidental pregnancy with theatrical tears about the miracle of life. I felt that familiar sting of jealousy, after all our struggles, all our heartbreak. But I pushed it down. I really did want to be happy for her, determined to be the best Aunt Lucas could have. Lucas was born, a healthy 8 lbs, 4 Oz. I was there, at the hospital, with flowers and this handmade blanket I'd spent months knitting for him. Cassandra seemed overwhelmed by motherhood from day one. She'd call me in tears about Lucas's colic or her exhaustion, and I'd step in, watching him overnight so she could just sleep. Adam, though, was less involved. I remember thinking at the time that maybe it was just too painful for him, after our own infertility struggles, to bond with a baby that wasn't ours. He was always kind when she brought Lucas over, but he maintained a certain distance. I never questioned it. Not then. Then came that Tuesday morning, the worst day of my life. Adam complained of a headache before leaving for work. I begged him to stay, but he had a big client meeting. "Just a migraine," he insisted, kissing me goodbye. "I'll call you after." That call never came. Instead, I got one from the hospital. By the time I arrived, he was gone. A brain aneurysm. They said there was nothing anyone could have done. He was 36. The next few days were a blur of unimaginable grief. And Cassandra? She was strangely absent. Text messages claiming Lucas was sick, or she couldn't find a babysitter. She barely showed up at the funeral, staying briefly, then vanishing before the reception. I was too numb to even process it. Then, a week after we buried Adam, Lucas's first birthday arrived. The absolute last thing I wanted was to attend a kid's party. But my mother insisted. Adam would want you to go, she said every day. Family comes first. So, there I was, driving to Cassandra's tiny rental house in a less than desirable part of town. A wrapped gift on the passenger seat. Dark circles under my eyes that no amount of concealer could hide. I hadn't slept since Adam died. Nights were spent staring at his empty side of the bed, reaching for a warmth that wasn't there anymore. I took a shaky breath, plastered on a smile, and knocked on the door. Cassandra's friend Jenna opened it. Her eyes widened, almost like she was surprised I'd actually come. "Oh, Bridget, you made it," she said, her voice strained, glancing over her shoulder. "Everyone's in the backyard." I walked through the house. Blue balloons, streamers, a happy first birthday Lucas banner. I noticed a group of strangers in the kitchen whispering. They fell silent as I passed, their eyes following me. In the backyard, my parents sat awkwardly at a picnic table. My dad looked so relieved to see me. "Bridget, we weren't sure you'd come." I mingled, accepting condolences, deflecting questions about how I was holding up. Everyone seemed on edge, conversation stopping the moment I approached. I just chalked it up to them not knowing how to act around a newly minted widow. After what felt like an eternity, Cassandra emerged from the house carrying Lucas on her hip. She was in a new dress, hair freshly highlighted. Lucas, adorable in a little button-up and bow tie, was kicking his chubby legs with excitement. Cassandra barely even looked at me as she put him in his high chair. She was energized, almost giddy, moving around the yard with this unsettling confidence. Then she tapped a spoon against her cup, calling for attention. "Thank you all for coming to celebrate Lucas's special day," her voice carried across the yard. "This past year has been full of surprises and challenges, as many of you know." Guests exchanged glances. My mother suddenly became fascinated with her shoes. "I've been keeping a secret," Cassandra continued, placing a hand on Lucas's head. "One I can no longer hide, especially after recent events." A cold chill ran down my spine. Something was terribly wrong. "Lucas is not Tyler's son," she announced. Her eyes, chillingly, found mine across the yard. "He is Adam's." The world stopped. I heard gasps around me, felt my father stiffen beside me. But it was all just background noise to the roar in my ears. "Bridget's husband and I had a brief affair 2 years ago," Cassandra continued, her voice steady, rehearsed. "It was a mistake, a moment of weakness for both of us. We never meant to hurt anyone, but these things happen." I stood frozen. My sister, claiming she'd slept with my husband. Claiming my nephew, the baby I'd lovingly cared for, was Adam's child. It was so completely, utterly absurd, I almost burst out laughing right then and there. But she wasn't finished. She reached into her purse and pulled out a folded document. Adam knew the truth about Lucas. Before he died, he updated his will. She held up the paper. He wanted his son to be provided for. This will states that half of the house Adam and Bridget owned should go to Lucas, as his biological child. Every single eye in that yard turned to me. Pity, morbid curiosity, discomfort. My parents looked absolutely shell-shocked. My father half stood like he wanted to intervene but didn't know how. And then, to everyone's surprise, including my own, I felt a smile tugging at my lips. Not a happy smile. The kind that comes when something is so outrageously, impossibly false. It borders on comical. I pressed my lips together, fighting to keep the inappropriate laughter from bubbling over. "Oh, I see," I said finally, my voice calm, even. I took a slow sip of water, just buying myself time to push down that urge to laugh in her face. "May I see this will, Cassandra?" Her confident expression flickered. She clearly hadn't expected that reaction. Slowly, she walked over and handed me the document. A typed page with what looked like Adam's signature at the bottom. I scanned it. Immediately, I saw the inconsistencies. The formal language was all wrong. Nothing like the legal documents Adam worked on. And the signature? While similar, it was a clear forgery. The connecting stroke, the final flourish, wrong. I carefully folded the paper and handed it back. "Thank you for sharing this with me. I think I need to go now." "That's it?" Cassandra asked, confusion etched on her face. "You're not going to say anything else?" "Not right now," I replied, calm as could be, gathering my purse. "This is Lucas's day. We can discuss this privately later." I said goodbye to my shell-shocked parents, promising to call. As I walked away, I could hear the murmurs behind me. The party atmosphere had completely shattered. Once I was safely in my car, out of view, I finally let out the laugh. It started small, a choked gasp, then grew until tears were streaming down my face. Not tears of joy, no. A strange, volatile mix of lingering grief, white-hot anger, and pure, incredulous disbelief at my sister's sheer audacity. Because there was something Cassandra didn't know. Something Adam and I had kept completely private. Something that made her elaborate, cruel lie not just hurtful, but utterly impossible. The truth about Cassandra's obsession with Adam actually began 3 years ago, long before Lucas was even a thought. We'd invited her over for dinner to celebrate her new job, her longest employment to date, if you can believe it. Adam made his famous lasagna. We opened a good bottle of wine. It was a pleasant evening until I had to take a work call. A client had a design emergency, and the call dragged on for almost 20 minutes. When I finally got back to the dining room, the atmosphere had completely shifted. Adam looked really uncomfortable. And Cassandra? She was sitting much closer to him than when I'd left, her hand on his arm, laughing at some joke I hadn't heard. At the time, I brushed it off. Cassandra was always affectionate, and the wine had been flowing. But later that night, as we were getting ready for bed, Adam seemed troubled. He sat on the edge of the bed. "There's something I need to tell you," he said, hesitant. "I don't want it to cause problems with your sister, but I also won't keep secrets from you." He explained that while I was on the phone, Cassandra had made a pass at him. Nothing dramatic, just inappropriate comments about how lucky I was to have him, followed by a suggestion that he deserved someone who truly appreciated him. When he rebuffed her, she just laughed it off as a joke. Said I was too sensitive if I thought she was serious. I was hurt, absolutely. But also, not entirely surprised. Cassandra always pushed boundaries. We decided to let it go. An isolated incident, fueled by wine and her usual competitive streak. But it wasn't isolated, not at all. Over the next few months, Cassandra found ways to touch Adam when I wasn't looking. She sent him text messages that walked that fine line between friendly and downright flirtatious. Once, she even showed up at his office uninvited, asking him to lunch. Each time, Adam gently but firmly maintained his boundaries. And each time, he told me immediately. After that office incident, we finally confronted my parents about Cassandra's behavior. It did not go well, not at all. They suggested Adam was misinterpreting friendly gestures, that Cassandra just looked up to him like a brother. My mother, bless her heart but with terrible judgment, even suggested that maybe Adam was feeling flattered and exaggerating. That night, Adam and I made a decision. We needed to create distance from Cassandra, without completely blowing up the family. We started declining invitations that included her, made sure we were never alone with her. And Adam? He finally blocked her number on his phone after she sent a particularly suggestive late-night message. Then came the medical issue, the one that changed everything. Adam had been experiencing pain for weeks before he finally saw a urologist. The diagnosis was a varicocele, an enlargement of veins requiring surgery. The procedure went well, but there was a complication. The doctor recommended a vasectomy during the same surgery, due to the extensive nature of the problem and potential for recurrence. It was a difficult decision, heartbreaking, especially given our infertility struggles. But we agreed it was the right choice for Adam's health. And this is key. The vasectomy was performed 2 years before Lucas was even conceived. We kept this information completely private. Not even our parents knew. After years of invasive questions about our childless status, we'd learned to protect our privacy around reproductive issues. The only people who knew were Adam, myself, and his doctors. After the surgery, as Adam was recovering, he made a prediction that sounded almost paranoid at the time. "Cassandra isn't done," he said, sitting in our garden, an ice pack discreetly positioned. "I have a feeling she might try something more drastic one day." I laughed it off, but Adam was serious. The very next week, he scheduled an appointment with our family attorney, James Wilson. I went with him. I listened as Adam meticulously detailed Cassandra's behavior and his recent medical procedure. James recommended documenting everything. The unwanted advances, the medical records confirming the vasectomy, even texts and emails from Cassandra. "You never know what might become relevant," James advised. "Better to have documentation and never need it than wish you had it later." We followed his advice. We created a file of everything related to the situation. Adam also updated his will, properly through official channels, making sure everything would come to me in the event of his death. James kept copies of all documents, and we put the originals in a safety deposit box at our bank. "Just in case," Adam had said as we locked the box. Though I plan to be around to deal with any of Cassandra's drama for at least another 50 years. The morning after that chaotic birthday party, I drove straight to the bank. The manager, who'd known Adam and me for years, gave me his condolences and led me to the vault. I sat alone in that quiet viewing room and opened the safety deposit box Adam and I had filled with what he jokingly called our disaster preparedness kit. Inside was everything. Adam's legitimate, notarized will, leaving absolutely everything to me. His medical records detailing that vasectomy 2 years before Lucas was even conceived, making it biologically impossible for him to be the father. There was a journal Adam had kept, meticulously documenting every single inappropriate interaction with Cassandra, complete with dates, times, and exact quotes. Printed copies of her suggestive text messages. A letter from our attorney, James Wilson, confirming he'd witnessed Adam's real will and was ready to verify its authenticity. And then, at the very bottom, a sealed envelope. My name in Adam's familiar handwriting. My fingers trembled as I opened it. "My dearest Bridget," it began. "If you are reading this, something has happened to me and you've needed to access these documents. I hope it's many years from now when we're old and gray, and Cassandra's antics are nothing but a distant memory we laugh about. But, if not, if the worst has happened, and she has tried to hurt you in my absence, please know that I tried to prepare for every possibility. Use these documents to protect yourself. I know how much you value family, how loyal you are to those you love. But you deserve to be protected from those who would take advantage of that beautiful heart of yours. I love you beyond words, beyond time. Whatever happens, know that. Adam." Tears streamed down my face. Here was his love, his protection, reaching out to me even after death. My practical, thoughtful husband. He'd anticipated this. Maybe not the exact scenario, but the possibility that Cassandra would try to exploit his death. I carefully put everything back in the box, except the copies I needed. The medical records, the legitimate will, a few key journal entries. Then I called James Wilson and scheduled an appointment for that afternoon. James Wilson's law office was in this beautiful, converted brownstone in downtown Boston, the kind of place that just exudes old money and discretion. I'd only been there a handful of times with Adam, but the receptionist recognized me instantly, her expression softening. James, a man in his 60s with silver hair, had been Adam's mentor. He embraced me briefly. "Bridget," he said, "I was devastated about Adam. He was one of the good ones." "He was," I agreed, my voice catching, "and it seems he was also right about preparing for the worst with my sister." I laid out what happened at the party, handing him Cassandra's forged will. James examined it, his expression growing more and more concerned. "This is an amateurish forgery," he finally said. "The language is all wrong. The signature would never stand up to expert analysis. But the fact that she created this at all is deeply troubling." Then I showed him my documents from the safety deposit box, the medical records, Adam's real will, his journal detailing Cassandra's behavior. James looked through them. "Adam was nothing if not thorough," he murmured. "These medical records alone disprove her claim about Lucas's paternity. The vasectomy was performed 2 years before the child was conceived. It is biologically impossible for Adam to be the father." "What do I do?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "I don't want to humiliate her publicly, but I cannot let her take half of our home based on a lie." James leaned back, considering. "First, we need more information. I recommend hiring a private investigator. People rarely attempt fraud of this nature without financial pressure." He immediately called Frank Delaney, a former police detective he often worked with. Frank arrived an hour later, stocky, no nonsense, with a thick Boston accent. He took detailed notes as I explained everything, asking pointed questions about Cassandra's relationships, finances, employment history. I realized then how little I actually knew about my own sister's life. "I'll need a few days," Frank said. "My focus will be on her financial situation and the actual father." I told him what little I knew about Tyler. He hadn't even been at the party, which was bizarre for the birthday boy's dad. Frank nodded. "Good starting point. I'll be in touch." 3 days later, Frank called. He wanted a meeting at James's office. When I arrived, both men were already there, documents spread across the conference table. "Mrs. Preston," Frank began, his voice grim, "I've uncovered some concerning information." Cassandra, he explained, was in dire financial straits, over $75,000 in debt, credit cards, personal loans, medical bills for Lucas. Turns out Lucas had needed surgery for a heart defect shortly after birth. Her credit score was abysmal. She'd been rejected for 3 loans in the last month alone. "She's also facing eviction," Frank said, sliding a document across the table. "This is a copy of the notice. She has until the end of the month to pay 4 months of back rent or vacate." "And Tyler?" He'd abandoned Cassandra and Lucas shortly after the birth, moving to Seattle with a new girlfriend. He was paying a pathetic $200 a month in child support, and even that was irregular. "I also found these," Frank said, handing me printouts of text messages. Cassandra had been telling friends about her plan for weeks. Messages between her and Jenna, Cassandra's friend who opened the door at the party. The messages were damning. "Adam's death is terrible, but maybe it's finally my chance to get what I deserve. That house is worth at least $800K now. If I play this right, I'll have a nice nest egg for Lucas and me. The will is almost ready. My friend Dave is good with Photoshop and found a sample of Adam's signature online from some charity auction. It looks totally legit. Bridget has always been the golden child. Time for me to get my share. She got 11 years with a great guy. The least she can do is share the wealth now that he's gone. I felt physically ill. This wasn't just opportunism. It was premeditated fraud, designed to capitalize on my deepest grief. There's more, Frank said gently. I ran a background check on Tyler Martin, the actual father. He has a history of domestic violence charges from a previous relationship, and there's an active warrant out for unpaid child support for another child in New Hampshire. He is not someone you would want around your nephew. I sat there, stunned. My sister wasn't just desperate. She was willing to destroy Adam's reputation, our entire marriage, to solve her money problems. And her choice in partners had put Lucas in a potentially dangerous situation. What do I do with all this? I finally managed, looking between James and Frank. I can't just expose all of this publicly. Lucas, he's innocent. He's still my nephew. James took off his reading glasses, rubbing the bridge of his nose. You have options, Bridget. We could file charges against Cassandra for attempted fraud and forgery. That would likely result in criminal penalties, possibly jail time, given the amount of money involved. He saw my distress. Or, he continued, we could handle this privately. Confront her with the evidence, require her to retract her claims, and potentially work out an arrangement that protects both you and the child. I left that meeting with James and Frank with a heavy heart, and a folder bursting with undeniable evidence. That evening, I called my therapist, Dr. Laurel Chen, who I'd been seeing since Adam died. I scheduled an emergency session. In her calm, plant-filled office, I just unloaded everything. I'm so angry I can barely see straight, I admitted. But Lucas, he's just a baby. None of this is his fault. And despite everything, Cassandra is still my sister. Dr. Chen listened, her gaze steady, asking about our relationship throughout our lives. It sounds like this pattern of competition and manipulation has existed since childhood, she observed. This current situation is an escalation, not an anomaly. What would you do? I asked, desperate. I can't tell you what decision to make, she replied gently. But I will say that compassion does not mean allowing yourself to be victimized. You can be kind while still establishing firm boundaries and consequences. After a lot of reflection, I decided on a course of action. I would confront Cassandra privately, with all the evidence. I would offer her a choice. Face the full legal consequences for her fraud, or accept a compromise that would provide for Lucas while demanding accountability from her. With newfound fierce determination, I called Cassandra the next morning. We need to talk about the will, I said when she answered. Can you come to my house tomorrow afternoon? Oh, I knew you'd come around, she replied, her voice smugly satisfied. I'll be there at 2. I spent the morning preparing, arranging documents, setting up a small recorder. James had reminded me that Massachusetts is a 2-party consent state, so I couldn't record her secretly. I'd have to ask for permission. At precisely 2:00 p.m., the doorbell rang. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. Cassandra stood on the porch, looking perfectly polished in a new outfit, her confidence radiating. Come in, I said, leading her to the living room. I'd set up 2 chairs facing each other, a coffee table between them. On it sat the recorder, water glasses, and my folder of documents. I hope you don't mind if we record our conversation, I said, looking her dead in the eye. It seems prudent given the legal nature of what we're discussing. Cassandra hesitated just for a second. Sure, whatever makes you comfortable, she said, feigning nonchalance, though I think this can be pretty straightforward. The will is clear. I turned on the recorder, stating the date, time, and confirming her consent. Then I leaned back, just studying her face. Before we discuss the will, I began, I'd like to understand exactly what you're claiming happened between you and Adam. Cassandra launched into her well-rehearsed story, the supposed affair 2 years ago, how she and Adam had connected during a time when we were having problems. She claimed they'd met multiple times at a downtown hotel, that Adam had confessed his unhappiness in our marriage, and that Lucas was conceived during these encounters. He always meant to tell you, she said, her eyes wide with practiced sincerity. But then Lucas was born with the heart condition, and he didn't want to add stress. He promised he'd provide for his son. I listened. I didn't interrupt. I just noted every inconsistency in her timeline, every detail that contradicted what I knew about Adam's schedule. When she finally finished, I started asking questions. Which hotel did you meet at? The Mandarin Oriental, she replied, quick as a flash. And what room number? She faltered. It was on a high floor. I don't recall the exact number. What days of the week did you usually meet? Tuesdays? Sometimes Thursdays? When he told you he was working late? I pressed, my questions growing more specific. What did Adam typically order from room service? What side of the bed did he prefer? Did he shower before or after? Cassandra grew increasingly flustered. Her answers became vague, then contradictory. Why does any of this matter? She finally snapped. The point is that Lucas is Adam's son, and the will proves Adam wanted to provide for him. Actually, I said, my voice calm, opening my folder, both of those claims are demonstrably false. I placed the medical records on the table between us. 2 years before Lucas was conceived, Adam had a vasectomy following surgery for a varicocele. It was completely successful, confirmed by follow-up tests. It was physically impossible for him to father a child after that procedure. Cassandra's face drained of color. She picked up the medical records with trembling hands, scanning the clinical language and dates. These could be faked, she said weakly. They are not, I replied. And Adam's doctor is prepared to testify to their authenticity if necessary. But that's just the beginning. Next, I produced Adam's legitimate will, notarized, properly filed with the court. This is Adam's actual will, prepared by James Wilson and witnessed by 2 partners at his firm. As you can see, it leaves everything to me, no mention of Lucas. Her confidence was visibly crumbling, but she tried one last rally. He must have changed it after this was drawn up. The will I have is more recent? The will you have, I said, my voice cutting and even, is a forgery. A poor one, I might add. James has already identified multiple legal inconsistencies in the language, and the signature is clearly fake. Creating a fraudulent will is a felony in Massachusetts, punishable by up to 5 years in prison. I continued methodically, presenting the evidence. Adam's journal, documenting her inappropriate advances, the text messages between her and Jenna, discussing the whole twisted plan, and finally Frank's report detailing her financial ruin, the eviction notice, Tyler's abandonment. We know everything, Cassandra, I said, as she sat there in stunned silence. The question now is, what happens next? For a long moment, she didn't speak. Then, to my surprise, she began to cry. Not the theatrical tears she used to manipulate our parents. These were deep, body-racking sobs. I didn't know what else to do, she finally choked out between gasps. I'm going to be homeless. Lucas and I will be out on the street in 2 weeks. Tyler left us with nothing. The medical bills, they just keep coming. I thought if I could just get some money from the house. So you decided to destroy Adam's reputation? I asked, my voice hardening. To tell everyone he cheated on me, to forge legal documents? I was desperate. She shouted, her sadness twisting into anger. You have everything. This big house, a successful business, everyone's respect. What do I have? A baby with a heart condition, $75,000 in debt, and an eviction notice. You try making good decisions in that situation. Her raw outburst hung in the air. The brutal honesty of it, stripped bare of all the manipulation and lies. It reached something in me. Not forgiveness, not yet. But maybe understanding. Lucas, he's Tyler's son, isn't he? I asked, more gently now. She nodded, wiping her eyes. Yes, Adam never touched me. Not like that. I did try with him years ago. He always shut me down immediately. He was annoyingly loyal to you. And the will? My friend Dave helped me create it. He does graphic design. Thought it would be easy to fake a signature. I was going to use it to pressure you into giving me money. I never thought you'd actually look into it so thoroughly. I turned off the recorder, leaning back, considering my next move. Cassandra watched me nervously, clearly expecting the hammer to fall. I could press charges, I said finally. What you did was illegal, not to mention cruel and calculated. She nodded miserably. I know. But that would hurt Lucas, I continued. And despite everything, he is my nephew. I love him. I leaned forward, making sure she was looking directly at me. So, here's what's going to happen. You are going to tell everyone the truth. That you lied about the affair, that Lucas is not Adam's son, and that you forged the will. You will apologize publicly to me, and to Adam's memory. And then what? She asked, her voice small. We'll still be evicted. I'm not finished, I said. In exchange for your full confession, and a legal agreement never to attempt anything like this again, I will help you and Lucas, not by giving you half my house, but by setting up a trust fund for Lucas's education and medical needs, and helping you find stable housing. Her eyes widened. Why would you do that, after what I did? Not for you, I said honestly. For Lucas. And because Adam would want me to help his nephew, even if that nephew's mother tried to destroy his reputation. There will be conditions, I continued. You will enter therapy and financial counseling. You will maintain steady employment. And you will allow me to be part of Lucas's life to ensure he is being properly cared for. If you violate any of these conditions, the support stops immediately. Cassandra was quiet for a long moment, processing everything. I don't deserve your help, she finally said. No, I agreed. You don't. But Lucas deserves a stable home and medical care, and I deserve to have my husband's memory untarnished. This solution gives us both what we need. After discussing the finer points, Cassandra agreed to my terms. We'd meet with James the next day to formalize the agreement, and she would make her public confession at a family dinner the following weekend. The family dinner I'd arranged for that Saturday evening was tense from the moment my parents arrived. My mother brought her signature lasagna, a peace offering. I don't know what this is about, she said, setting it on my counter. But Cassandra's been calling us in tears, saying you're forcing her to come to some sort of family meeting. Just wait until everyone's here, I replied, pouring her a glass of wine. This needs to be addressed once, with everyone present. By 7, we were all seated around my dining room table. My parents, Cassandra, Lucas was with a babysitter, and me. A small recorder sat in the center of the table just as James had advised. Thank you all for coming, I began after explaining the recording. I've asked Cassandra to share some important information with you. Cassandra looked pale, uncomfortable. Her usual confidence had vanished. She stared down at her plate as she spoke. I lied about Lucas being Adam's son, she said, her voice barely a whisper. Adam and I never had an affair. Lucas is Tyler's child, and I forged the will I showed at the birthday party. My parents just stared at her in stunned silence. But why would you do such a thing? My father finally demanded, his voice thick with disbelief. Do you have any idea what that claim did to your sister? To Adam's reputation? Cassandra started to explain her desperate financial situation, her voice gaining strength as she detailed the mounting debts, Tyler's abandonment, the eviction notice. As she spoke, I watched my mother's expression shift from shock to sympathy. Oh, honey, my mother said when Cassandra finished. Why didn't you just come to us for help? You didn't need to make up such terrible lies. Would you have given me $400,000? Cassandra asked bluntly. Because that's what I would have gotten if my plan had worked. Half the value of Bridget's house. Of course we couldn't give you that kind of money, my father countered. But we could have helped with the rent, at least temporarily. Instead, you chose to try to defraud your own sister while she was grieving her husband. I know it was wrong, Cassandra admitted. Bridget has already made that abundantly clear. She has the evidence to press charges against me if she wanted to. My mother turned to me in alarm. You wouldn't do that to your own sister, would you, Bridget? I felt a flash of hot frustration at her immediate defense of Cassandra. Even now. I could, I said firmly. What she did was not just immoral, but illegal. Forgery and fraud are felonies. But she's family, my mother insisted, and she has Lucas to think about. I'm family too, I replied, my voice rising. Slightly. Your daughter too. The one who just lost her husband, and then had to defend his memory against false accusations of infidelity. Where was your concern for me in all this? My father shifted uncomfortably. Of course we care about you, Bridget, but Cassandra has always needed more help, more guidance. And whose fault is that? I challenged. You've been bailing her out of her poor decisions her entire life. Maybe if you'd let her face consequences occasionally, she wouldn't have escalated to criminal behavior. My mother gasped. That's hardly fair, Bridget. We've always treated you girls equally. But Cassandra, surprisingly, shook her head. No, Mom, you haven't. Bridget's right. You always made excuses for me, always found ways to fix my mistakes. It didn't help me. It just made me think I could do whatever I wanted without consequences. My parents looked utterly stunned by this admission. For perhaps the first time, Cassandra was taking responsibility, rather than deflecting blame. So, what happens now? My father asked, looking between us. Is Cassandra going to jail? No, I said. I've decided not to press charges under certain conditions. I outlined the agreement Cassandra and I had reached, the trust fund for Lucas, the therapy and financial counseling requirements, the steady employment condition. That's very generous, my father said, looking profoundly relieved. Especially after what she did. It's more than generous, Cassandra agreed quietly. It's more than I deserve. My mother, predictably, brightened. Oh, this is all working out for the best. Cassandra has apologized, Bridget is helping with Lucas, and we can put this ugly business behind us. It's not that simple, Mom, I said firmly. Trust has been broken here. The healing will take time if it happens. At all. And there need to be boundaries going forward. What kind of boundaries? She asked, looking worried. For one thing, I need you both to stop enabling Cassandra's behavior. No more bailouts, no more excuses. She needs to stand on her own feet with appropriate support that doesn't perpetuate dependency. My father nodded slowly. That seems reasonable. And I need you to respect that my relationship with Cassandra will be different now. I'm involved in Lucas's life because I love him and want the best for him. But Cassandra and I won't be close the way we once were. At least not for a long time. My mother looked distressed. But we're family. We need to stick together, especially now. Being family doesn't mean tolerating abuse, Mom, I said gently. What Cassandra did was abusive. She tried to use my grief to manipulate me, to take advantage of me at my most vulnerable. That has consequences, even within a family. The rest of the dinner was subdued, my parents clearly processing this new reality. When they left, my father hugged me tightly, whispering, "I'm proud of you, Bridget. Adam would be too." My mother hugged me as well, but her eyes were sad. Already mourning the idealized family dynamic she'd always pretended we had, Cassandra was the last to leave. At the door, she hesitated. "I really am sorry, Bridget," she said again. "Not just for the will and the lies, but for everything. For the years of competition and jealousy. For not being the sister you deserved." "I know," I replied. "And I hope the therapy helps you understand why you made these choices. Lucas deserves a mother who is emotionally healthy and honest. Do you think you'll ever forgive me?" I considered the question. Carefully. "I don't know," I answered truthfully, "but I'm willing to see where this new path takes us, for Lucas's sake. And maybe, someday, for ours too." The drive home for my parents was silent, each of us lost in our own thoughts. I knew one thing for certain. Our family would never be the same. But perhaps in time, it could become something healthier, built on honesty rather than illusion. 1 year after Adam's death, I stood in our garden, watching the spring bulbs push through the soil. The daffodils Adam had planted last fall were blooming, a riot of yellow against the fresh green lawn. I felt a bittersweet ache seeing them, knowing he'd put them in the ground hoping to see them bloom. So much had changed. Lucas's trust fund was established, already helping with his ongoing medical needs. His heart condition, while still monitored, was responding well, and he was growing into this cheerful, curious toddler. And Cassandra, she had genuinely surprised everyone by embracing the conditions of our agreement. 6 months of therapy had helped her recognize the patterns of her behavior, stemming from childhood, that constant need to compete with me, the self-sabotage that had defined so many of her decisions. She'd found steady employment as an office manager at a dental practice, a job that actually provided stability and benefits. Our relationship remains formal but cordial. I see Lucas regularly, taking him to the park or the children's museum. Cassandra and I don't pretend to be close, but we've found a way to coexist peacefully, for Lucas's sake. My parents initially struggled with the new boundaries I'd set. My mother especially found it hard to accept that her daughters wouldn't have the close bond she'd always envisioned. But over time, even they've adjusted, learning to support Cassandra without enabling her dependency. As for me, the grief support group I'd joined shortly after Adam's death became a lifeline. 12 strangers, bound by loss, who became friends. We understood each other in ways even well-meaning family and friends couldn't. We met weekly, sharing our journeys through grief, celebrating small victories, and supporting each other through the inevitable setbacks. 3 months after the confrontation with Cassandra, I established the Adam Preston Foundation for Legal Education, providing scholarships to underprivileged students interested in corporate law. It gave me purpose, seeing Adam's legacy continue, in the careers of young, idealistic lawyers who might otherwise never have had the chance. Old friends stepped up in ways I never anticipated. Adam's law partners checked in regularly, inviting me to dinners, making sure I wasn't isolated. My college roommate, Sarah, flew in from Chicago monthly just to spend weekends with me, sometimes doing nothing more than watching movies and ordering takeout. And then there was Michael. I met him at a fundraiser for the foundation 6 months after Adam died. He's an ethics professor at Boston University. Thoughtful, kind, with a quiet sense of humor that reminds me of Adam in some ways. We started as friends, coffee after foundation meetings, then occasional dinners. It's different from what I had with Adam, and it should be. Michael understands that Adam will always be a part of my life, that loving again doesn't mean replacing what came before. We're taking things slowly, both cautious but hopeful. Standing in the garden that spring morning, I reflected on everything Adam had taught me, not just during our years together, but even after he was gone. His foresight in preparing those documents had protected me when I was at my most vulnerable. His journal entries validated my experiences with Cassandra when my own parents tried to dismiss them. His love continued to shield me, even in his absence. I'd learned so many difficult lessons through this ordeal. That family relationships need clear boundaries to be healthy. That documentation isn't just a legal precaution, but sometimes an emotional necessity. That forgiveness doesn't have to mean forgetting or allowing harmful patterns to continue. And that sometimes the people we expect to protect us are the very ones we need protection from. But I also learned about my own strength. I'd faced Cassandra's betrayal, navigated the legal complexities, and made incredibly difficult decisions about how to move forward, all while still processing the devastating loss of my husband. I'd found a way to honor Adam's memory while building a new life for myself. The daffodils swayed in the spring breeze, resilient after the long winter. Grief is like that too. Not a straight line, but a series of seasons, each bringing its own challenges and unexpected beauties. I wasn't the same person I was before Adam died, before Cassandra's betrayal. I was stronger in some ways, more cautious in others, but ultimately more authentic in how I approached relationships and boundaries. Sometimes the most painful betrayals force us to find strength we never knew we had. You couldn't have known what would happen after you were gone, I said softly to the garden Adam had loved. But somehow you prepared me to face it. And in that way, your love protects me still. As I turned to go back inside, I felt a sense of peace that had been absent for so long. Not because the grief was gone, it never truly would be, but because I had found a way to carry it alongside hope for the future. Adam had given me that gift, teaching me that love endures even when the person is gone. That preparation and honesty are acts of profound caring. If there's one thing I'd share with anyone facing betrayal within their family, it's this. Protect yourself with both documentation and boundaries. The people who truly love you will respect those boundaries, and the ones who don't, well, they were never truly safe for you to begin with.